Hi, may I have your attention? Hi. Welcome back. Welcome to the second panel of today, of the pre-event. The title of this panel is Peace Building and State Building in the Western Balkans. And the topics that we'll be covering are going to vary from ways of preventing state failure to the impact of nationalism on state building, how social factor is a security factor, and lastly but not least, the evolution of state building in Kosovo. Our first presentation will be held by Natalia Piskunova, who holds a degree, a PhD in international relations from Moscow State Institute for International Relations, and is a researcher at the Institute of International Relations in Moscow. The title of her paper is Preventing State Failure in Western Balkans in Post-Crisis Period, Lessons to be Considered. Natalia, the floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, dear researchers, dear students, and dear organizers, first of all, I would like to thank everyone for coming here and for giving me the opportunity to present a few points from my research that I derived from several years of experience as a theorist and as a political scientist. I will try to be quite brief and to have more time for the questions and one-to-one communication process. As was announced, my report deals with the idea of preventing state failure in the Western Balkans in post-crisis periods. And I understand that the topic may sound quite long one to most of you, and the phenomenon of state failure is also mostly associated with the countries of the Middle East and Africa, and that definitely not very randomly concerned with the European countries and the countries of Western Balkans in particular. I would like to make 5 points here, and I will try to be quite brief in that. So what I would like to say in the first place is a kind of introductory point. The thing is that the present state of the international relations as a domain and as a practical reality in which we all live in is quite complicated, as we would say. The thing is that we now have the challenges that were previously not posed to the international system of security and stability, as well as the system of international relations. And the new challenges deal not only with the conflicts and the strife between regions, mostly with the strife which comes from within the regions. We see, in theory, there is a lot of talk about the state as an institution losing its positions and actually giving away its functions as one of the key players in the chess field of international relations. Quite an arguable issue, but still there is a lot of talk going on in this area. We see the shift of focus in the domain which was mostly dominated by the key player in the international security sector, which was the state. And this has practical as well as theoretical inclinations for the regions, especially for the Western Balkans regions, and that reminds us of a set of questions which we have to bear in mind when we try to assess the situation in general. First of all, I would like to say a few words about the initial questions that we have to address when speaking about the situation of a post-conflict problem or peace building, which comes or either after the conflict has ended or in the process of peace building and peacekeeping. I believe that if we are to create a quite a visible and viable, I would say, scheme of theoretical and practical assessment of the idea of prevention of state failure in the Western Balkans as well as in other regions of Europe, it is very important for us to consider a few questions which are quite vital both for theory and practice here. Mainly 3 of them as I have derived from the research. One is the question that we address: what is the pathway, the initial pathway for state failure in the Western Balkans, as opposed, say, to the schemes of state failure in other regions, in the Middle East, for example, or in Latin America. Definitely, we see that the pathways may be different. So what is the way, a pathway for the Balkans? What are the dangers which may be derived from there? That is the first question. Another question to be addressed here is that is there any relation, direct or indirect, between the type of governance established in a certain state or region and the prospect of state failure in this or that region? In other words, how the type of governance affects the probability or the proneness of a certain state to failure or to effective governance. So what is the point here? And the third question, which we may address, speaking about the post-conflict state failure, is the question which says what are the threats, again, and dangers which may be derived from the region and which may be transferred from the Western Balkans region to the world itself. So it means, is there any mechanism which brings the grassroots problems of state governance in the Western Balkans to the world initially as well? So I would like to sound a preliminary hypothesis which I derived from the research on the Western Balkans, which says that the modern security configuration which we see in the Western Balkans is quite challenging, definitely, and it poses challenges not only to the region in general, but to the system of governance, which has absolutely changed with the course of years, especially the last 20 years. And the states, taken either separately or in general, do not have the leverages to overcome these challenges. So what are these? First of all, one of these is a poor governance, which may be either statistically or effectively proved by analyzing different data. Another problem is that in certain cases, the poor governance acts as a trigger which fosters this sustained internal spiral of violence, which may not be seen quite visibly in the form of open manifestations and protestations and any open aggression, which somehow contaminates, I would say, the effective system of governance by posing the challenge in the form of alternative elites and non-state actors, which has become a new topic for recent decades. The phenomena of which I speak, the phenomena of state failure, is rather a new one in the theory of international relations. As strange as it may sound, still there is no clear single definition of a state failure. It doesn't exist in course books. It is not applied in the statecraft practice as well. In international law, however, there are few glimpses of state failure, but still we do not have the single definition of the phenomena which we speak about, yet it is there. The thing is that the attention was attached to the state failure issue only in the 1990s, where there was a dissolution of certain great states, and that provoked a certain interest to the state failure, state decline, but that was only a mixture. 20 years later, in this discipline, we still see quite a chaotic understanding of what leads to state failure and what is the pathway to state failure, being it a regional one or an international one again. What is to be taken into consideration in say in the situation with the Western Balkans here? The thing is that in a statistical assessment of prospect of state failure taken by the Fund for Peace, the state failure index, with which you may be quite familiar with, countries of Balkans are not taken as a region. They are taken only as several different countries and ranked according to different parameters. It is with great interest that I read this index, and I derived from that only 4 countries enjoy the rating and have the in-depth analysis from the international bodies such as the Fund for Peace. Mainly, it was interesting for me to learn that it is important to see that there are 4 main factors which do affect the prospect for state failure in the Western Balkans. One of them is a demographic issue. mounting demographic pressure in certain countries and absolute demographic failure and prospects for failure in other Balkan countries. Movement of refugees, which still continues even in a post-conflict situation, even 20 or 15 years after the conflict as well. There are certain vengeance-seeking groups, mostly from those ethnic groups derived from direct governing facilities as well, and quite an uneven economic development within the groups. It is important to give a few statistical points here before I go to the third point. With the Balkan case, with the Western Balkan case, we have only 4 countries listed in the Fund for Peace State Failure Index, which does not allow us to make any general conclusions on that. The thing is that if we take the 2011, the recent data for the Balkans, we will see that Serbia and Macedonia were placed at 98th and 106th place in the world list for state failure, and they received 74, 71 points, so which makes quite a small margin between them. However, the situations in these 2 countries, if we go in depth, are quite diverse. We know the financial crisis which happened to Macedonia, and another perspective is for Serbia, so it's very difficult to evaluate that. Another point is that for the State Failure Index, Croatia and Montenegro received also quite similar data. They had 132nd and 134th place accordingly. But still, if we take the scale of political developments and scale of economic development in these countries, we will see that they're quite diverse. So again, I was sounding all this data only to show that even today in the international statistical bodies, which are called for providing us the statistical data as a proof for any challenges and problem for state failure, there is no single opinion about this, and there is no single data that there is a higher prospect for a single country of the region, or there is a higher prospect for the region all in all as well. That's as what the statistic goes. The thing is that there are a lot of drawbacks for developing any single approach for analyzing the prospect for failure in all the post-conflict countries of Western Balkans. The problem is that we may apply the international law approach here, but with certain, certain drawbacks as well. The thing is that, as I said in the beginning, there is no such a term legally acknowledged as a failed state or a state failure itself. So we can speak of a poor governing, scheme in one country, or ineffective governance, or anything which goes beyond the exact item of the state failure as well. However, there are certain points which should be made here. The problem is that from the position of the international law as well as international relations theory, state failure as itself poses a great challenge for understanding the local situation. There is a collision of 2 fundamental principles, both applied in international law and international relations. On the one hand, if we deal with state failure, we have the internationally recognized political and diplomatic unity, which has a corresponding right of state and statehood on the one hand, and is a full actor of international law and international relations. So this is a principle of respect for internationally recognized state. However, on the other hand, what we have is that international law and international relations do provide us with a principle of territorial integrity. So there is a self-determination principle versus the principle of territorial integrity, and again, how do we position the state failure phenomena between these 2 principles? Whenever we try to say that there is a higher prospect for, say, one country of the Western Balkans for post-conflict state failure, we do have to bear in mind that there are those principles guarding the territorial integrity of each of the countries, and so this prevents us from making any labels whether this is a state failure or still not. So that's another question derived from international law that we have to bear in mind here. Another point is that There is, again, I said there is no clear understanding of the international legal norms which may be applicable to the case of state failure, be it in the Western Balkans or worldwide as well. And there is no test for the failure. We cannot pinpoint the exact moment of failure and say that that was the initial thing which prevented the state from becoming integral unity. However, with the conclusion, I would like to say that given all the chaotic things, chaotic lessons derived from the state failure prospect and understanding state failure as a research, we do have some positive moments. One thing is that we have a positive window of opportunity here for analyzing state failure. If Western Balkans do exhibit alternative factors which can prevent the states from dissolving by providing more capacity building from the alternative elites, from the ethnic groups, or providing more capacities from economic decisions, the development of internal economy and, for example, developing the, say, customs regime between these different countries. This may provoke the debate on which the state failure prospect in the Western Balkans will be quite mild and will probably be more in a positive research style than in a negative research style, which I had the opportunity to speak to you today. I hope the lessons will be learned here, and maybe we'll clarify a few things in the open session question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia. That was very interesting. And our next presenter is Oksana Usapenko. She holds a PhD in world history at the Kiev National Taras Shevchenko University in Ukraine. And she's also a junior research fellow at the Institute of World Economy and International Relations at the National Academy of Sciences in Ukraine within the Department of Theory of IR. Therefore, I invite Oksana to give you her presentation on the topic of state building process and nationalism in the Western Balkans, theoretical aspects. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to make a public presentation. My paper deals with the historical analysis and it is the theoretical overview of the current situation in the Balkan region, because I'm just beginning to research this problem more deeply. So I present you my opinion on the current situation in the region. So every nation, especially at the early stage of nation and state building process, strives to strengthen its presence in the international arena. So any country in the Western Balkan political space does. The modern system of international relations points that the nation state still remains eternally legitimate entity. According to the theorist of nationalist Michael Mann, the European nation states are not dying and do not hasten to fade out. They simply change their functions, which can be changed again. Multinational Yugoslavian state. It could be called the national revolutions, when the number of new states appeared in the borders of the former ethno-territorial federation. It was about the establishment of the states with the lack of consolidated nation or even with their absence at all. And nationalism was essential for the states to legitimize their actions directed at the consolidation of the population and this transformation into a homogeneous cultural community, the nation. Ethnic Balkan nationalisms undermine already unstable system of international relations in the region and caused, as you know, the Yugoslavian wars, Kosovo crisis, and ethnopolitic armed conflict in Macedonia. But we should have to say that this effect was not spread to the Balkan region, being located just in the post-Yugoslavian political and geographical space. At the same time, a hasty recognition of the independence, selective support by the international community of some former Yugoslavian republics, as well as an unfavorable attitude towards the others, directly influenced the state-building process in the region and further development of newly emerged countries. Moreover, some of them, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Kosovo, are independent de jure, but de facto they are state entities with limited sovereignty. The Yugoslavian heredity was reflected in that the territorial foundations, for example, of the Bosnian state were laid, but a common national identity hasn't been developed. The distinctive feature of post-Dayton Bosnia is the constant need of the foreign political support to balance the inherent instability of the political system. The constitutional crisis, together with the economic dependence on the external donations in Bosnia-Herzegovina, doesn't provide the clear prospects for the future of the Bosnian state. Several compact resident ethnic nations, Serbs, Bosniaks, and Croatians, and minorities live in Bosnia Federation. Each of them considered this area as its own homeland. In such a state, the basis for the national and state consolidation should be created by the domestic, political, and legal means, including ideological means like the common state patriotism. The process of the state centralization in Bosnia is imposed from the outside and is not the result of a joint will of the federal entities for integrated institution building and internal consolidation. Also, the recent interest in the Republic of Macedonia and the Macedonians, which used to be called a successful national project of the Yugoslavian government, with in charge the numerous Macedonian intellectuals, writers, and historians, and so on. However, it does not mean that Macedonians is an ethnic formation that have a natural and artificial origin. Macedonian nation can also be defined as an imaginary community, according to the concept of the theorist Benedict Anderson. But it is true in the context that this nation is a relatively modern one in contrast to Albanians, Bulgarians, Greeks, and Serbs, which were developed as imagined communities earlier and built up their own national state quite before Macedonians. Also, a striking example of the conflict between two nationalisms is the Greek-Macedonian dispute over the name of the country Macedonia and ethnonym Macedonian, as all of us know. Sometimes titles really matter, but in this case it is the problem of the nation that can or cannot be a nation, or even to claim the status of a nation. Prospects for narrow resolution of this dispute on symbolic grounds are unlikely. That significantly undermines the international system in the region. But it is important to have a realistic view of matters. This kind of cultural nationalism will not lead to real aggressive actions of neighboring countries, one against the other. It is assumed that if Macedonians lose their title under foreign pressure, they will enter the number of disappeared people. On the other hand, it should be noted that Albanians are the most growing ethnicity in the Western Balkans that actively strives for the nation consolidation, and this is contributed by the demographic rates as well as the recent armed conflicts in Kosovo and Macedonia. Also, the main problem of the governments in the Balkan region since the early 1990s was that they did not direct their efforts to reconstruction of the destroyed economic system, conservation and development of the previous property, and efficient official use of the internal resources. Instead of these effective efforts, they started to manipulate but national feels of their people, blindly following and accepting the political, economic, social, and cultural standards of liberal democracy of the developed countries, where nation-state building process had been completed long time ago. It should be faced that excessive external intervention may lead to identifying the process of democratization, European and Euro-Atlantic integration with foreign independence and deficient construction of the nation. Besides political and ideological impacts, suspicion of the financial support in the region will inevitably lead to the collapse of the reform programs. The phenomenon of dependence of the aid, the international transfer without creation favorable conditions for economic recovery and constant self-development is particularly sensitive for Macedonia, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's probably that without foreign subsidies and donations, the agricultural Kosovo may turn to the country of social conflicts and can become the source of mass illegal migration to the European countries. Also, the lack of the internal resources of democracy can be compensated by the external factor as long as the prospects of European and Euro-Atlantic integration membership is attractive and close to the Western Balkan societies. But the question is also in the readiness of the EU to accept the new members. In case of Western Balkan societies, we can urge that loyalty to the state and common national identity are not widely shared among all citizens. But this is very important for state-building process of any state. In the search for own path of national state development, the concept of structures of self-sufficiency of the society formulated by Ukrainian theorists should be mentioned. It involves the development of an effective public administration system, including the system of national security, army, military, industrial complex, the system of science and education, healthcare system, the system of resource saving, and the system of basic technological cycles. These structures determine the ability of the state to operate outside the integration unions, providing its citizens an adequate level of security, prosperity, equity, and ability to an independent foreign policy. For all mentioned above, in the case of the ethnic fragmented Western Balkan societies, we're witnessing still unfinished process of nation building, which is closely connected with the state building process. But the strong consolidated political nation with the rational strategy of political, social, economic and cultural development can be created by powerful nation and state. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Oksana. That was great timing. We're halfway through. Our next presenter is Zora Popova. She has obtained her PhD at the University of Bath on the topic of the role of the social capital for post-ethnic conflict reconstruction in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And she is currently working as an expert in the Unit for Alternative Prognosis, Analysis and Actions with the administration of the President of the Republic of Bulgaria. I invite Zora Popova to present her topic, the social capital as a security factor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me see. Okay, I'll try to be as short as possible because my presentation is a bit more theoretical than the rest, and I hope not to bore you too much with these theoretical findings. So, what is the challenge? The challenge I'm establishing in the beginning is the EU membership feasible for the countries, for the people who have fought to drive a path, and now could they become EU citizens and to reconstruct the former Yugoslavia in a way within the European Union? So is this expected in large EU, would it be a feasible construct? So the feasibility of the project depends on the success of the transforming the nationals into EU citizens and of building up a supra-level social capital throughout the EU. This means that a development of an overarching identity is needed, as well as a shared supranational platform. Alternatively, the political construct would be prone to failures. Lack of shared values and perceptions of trust and collective goals could impede the process of institution building and the normal operation of the system, becoming even a security challenge in the likely case of confronting interests. So, what is a social contract? The institution of social contract is something that we could say it's a foundation, the basic rules established and accepted by everybody within a shared political, territorial, organizational space, whatever. The social contract sets, in fact, the terms of the game, we could say so. This means it sets the parameters of the social order, it sets the type of a political membership, and the rules for access to and distribution of resources. This is, here I would connect my paper, my presentation, to the presentations given in the first panel, and would express my opinion that I do not believe that multiculturalism in this sense is good for the Balkans, because what social contract, the policy of multiculturalism sets, is that ethnicity becomes the primary, the fundamental principle of all this social order of the social contract. So when the ethnicity is promoted as the first factor that establishes the rules of the games, what type of a cohesion and integration we could expect? Instead of this, I think that Balkan countries need a type of social contract that focuses on the inclusive citizenship rules, which means building up supra-ethnic and supranational civil identity. So social contract is in fact the principle that underlies the social capital building. And what is social capital? I would not go into all the theories that explain the different aspects of social capital. Just will outline the major aspects, projects, when you think, you discuss theoretically social capital. So the micro approach focuses on the cognitive level, which means on the values, trust, common interests, and so on, and relationship between people. The meso-level approach focuses on the so-called structural social capital and tries to establish the connections, how the connections between different groups function within and between groups. The macro approach, on the other hand, emphasizes the environmental, social and political structures that enable or impede social engagement and civil political participation. So these are the three, we could separate the existing theories of social capital in these three parts. There are two more. There is also another approach which tries to build more comprehensive structure of social capital, to present it as a system. You can see here the so-called SCAT model, which is social capital. The model is built on the so-called social capital assessment tool. And as you can see in the circle, inner circle, you've got the micro level with the cognitive and structural social capital, and the outer circle, the macro level of the, which is the level of the institutions, the rule of law, and legal frameworks, and so on. So this is one of these models developed, and the other one model is built, as you can see, around this coordination system with the macro and micro level of social capital. I hope you can read it, but sorry if you can't. And so you've got macro level and micro level, and you've got structural social capital and cognitive social capital. And the macro structural social capital, you've got the institution of the state and the rule of law. The macro cognitive is the governance. The microstructural is the there are the local institutions and networks, and the micro cognitive, here we speak about trust, local norms and values. So, okay, so, just sorry. Social capital as a system social capital is a system. So the concept of the conceptual framework that you saw just before incorporates different studies that developed by presenters and researchers over the years. This four-dimensional coordination system reveals the simultaneous manifestation of social capital at the two levels, at the macro and micro level, and in variety of forms. The structural social capital is relatively objective and observable construct, while the cognitive social capital, referring to shared values and norms, appears more subjective and intangible. So, some findings about the system of social capitals. As you saw, all the elements are projected within this single coordination system. And this is why all the elements, in order this system to be stable, this coordination system to be stable, all the elements within it they are functionally connected. And the coherence of the system depends on the compatibility and the commensurability of its elements with the macro level. In fact, the macro level is the one that determines the scope of the construct, which means what? If you've got a macro level of the state, then you need to think of a governance at state level. You think to consider the local networks as local networks working with the state level, and the trust in values and shared norms, again referring to the level of the state. If the macro framework is the EU, then you should think about the governance of the EU, you should think about the local networks that are EU local networks, not exactly national local networks. And you've got to think about trust and values at the EU level. So why social capital can be viewed as a security factor? The two complex models you saw of social capital reveal that functional balance within an observed unit, being political, territorial, organizational, whatever, could be achieved only if the elements of the system are complementary to each other and connected in a dynamic equilibrium. Alternatively, it is very likely that the social machine would not be able to operate properly, and eventually a failure would occur. An imbalanced system with the macro and micro levels in conflict is a security challenge. The case of the post-ethnic conflict Bosnia and Herzegovina, projected through the adapted model of social capital, provides the example. So here, I hope you would be able to understand the graph looking at it from a distance. At the macro level, what you've got in Bosnia is a macro level of the state. You've got institutions of the state and the governance of the state. But in fact, the state does not have micro level. Instead of a single micro level that corresponds to the state, you've got two micro levels. One of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the other micro level of the Federation of the Republika Srpska. So in fact, if we speak about local institutions, we do not have local institutions on a national level, but local institutions within Federation and local institutions within Republika Srpska. If we speak of trust and norms and values, we do not have such at national level, but norms and values within the Federation and norms and such as shared values and trust within Republika Srpska. With these two micro levels, in fact, what occurs there, what happens there is that they have developed their own macro levels. So you've got this mirror structure, and as you can see well, it is very easily to drive these two apart and to, in fact, have two different states than one, because at the micro level is non-existent. So social capital of post-conflict Bosnia and Herzegovina, in fact, the problem is this, that the macrostructural level corresponds to the formally recognized political unit. The macro-cognitive level of governance refers to national governance, which often lacks legitimacy, what was the case in Kosovo, as we heard before. It lacks capacities and power to move the process in the desired direction. The real, in fact, effective governance is performed at the microstructural level. It rests with local networks and institutions, often constituted upon exclusive bonds and restricted membership. In this context, trust and norms at the microcognitive level are present only within the communities and not across them. Not across the members of the different groups. The state is viewed as an abstract and hostile entity run by foreigners through their local puppets. The lack of trust in the institution impedes any affiliation with the state. Major mistake is the presumption that once the formal state institutions are restored, the state machine will start functioning immediately. In the case of an engineering political unit, regardless whether this is an imposed statehood or formal union membership, existing community identities are likely to be reinforced rather than substituted by an overarching identities. So in a post-conflict environment, any effort that require involvement of citizens and civil society at the level of the state are more likely to fail. A crucial factor for ensuring development and stability of the new formation is the establishment of a proper bridging ties to enable ethnic or national community members to start identifying themselves as citizens of the larger political unit. So what could be done? Success can be achieved at macrostructural level. It's more easily achieved than the success at microstructural level. But in any case, weak or missing micro level could impede process and hamper the viability of the construct as a whole. Development of the micro level, if you think of this future enlarged EU, including the countries of the Western Balkans. So development of this micro-level EU social capital remains a difficult task even for traditional EU member societies. Just think of the protests going on in Greece, regardless the threat that there is to the Eurozone in general, but the Greeks, in this case, they fight for their social national rights without even thinking about the consequences for the EU. So even for the old EU countries, still, this process of building shared identities, trust, and so on is still a challenge. A stable and prosperous heterogeneous political unit is viable only if there is a functioning system of social capital with matching elements in all of the four these quadrants. A micro level based on a functioning civil contract, social contract could drive in positive processes. So the macro unit determines the direction. Building social capital cannot be imported, transformed instantly, or imposed from outside. It should be nourished and enabled to emerge and develop. In the context of the future enlargement of the EU, investment in the development of EU social contract and supranational social capital by promoting nested identities and inclusive political membership rules is needed. Providing grants for social cohesion by enabling cooperation among people and creating an environment where tolerance and will for cooperation could emerge from the interest in the common future as a shared good. So, investing in social capital development, social capital is not by definition a social good, but in any case it can breach and mitigate exclusive relations, prevent conflicts and facilitate collective action. It can motivate individuals to work together, and the end result is seen when the end result is seen not only as a common good but also a personal benefit. Social capital can be a change-generating mechanism. It could mobilize resources and distribute them within society and bring about greater safety. Also can strengthen institutions. So, as a conclusion, we can say that social contract is context-dependent and it provides the basis for building a social capital. So social capital is a complex mechanism that enables the functioning of any social system and ensures its coherence. if the elements of social capital are of mismatching scope, size, field, etc., a failure is likely to occur and the system to collapse. If the macro level of social capital does not embrace a relevant micro level, the stability of the construct and its viability would be at stake. From this point of view, social contract appears as a security factor. So, thank you for the attention.
Thank you, Zora. I've come to our last presentation. This is going to be held by Konrad Pawlowski, who holds a PhD and is also a lecturer at the Marie Curie University in Poland. He's been doing a lot of research on Kosovo, and his thesis focused on the role of NATO in Kosovo. His presentation will now look at how the initial peace building in Kosovo has evolved towards an unexpected state building.
Thank you very much. First, as an academic, I would say that I didn't pay too much attention to the theory of international relations, because I don't, so maybe it's a little bit strange, but I don't believe that peace building really, sometimes it simply doesn't work. And I think that it is, unfortunately, it's the case in the Balkans, because we should answer the question, where was the Europe in 1951 and where are the Balkans in the moment? And I think that this question should be answered. But of course, we see some progress, but there are many things which are still unresolved. So I'm very skeptical about, the progress. And of course, we see the progress, but it's very slow from my perspective. But I would like to say about the international policy over Kosovo, and I will be very critical on this issue, because I think that this process from the very beginning was not about the peace building actually, but about the state building. And of course it was enforced by the majority of the Kosovo citizens, but I think that not the majority is the one to blame, and I would like to blame a little bit the international society on this issue. So first, the creation of provisional institutions of self-government, and you know it very well, it was in the year of 2001, and from my perspective it was of course a part of democratization of Kosovo, but truly I think that it was the result that these so-called parallel institutions have already existed. So it was very, rational to put some control on these parallel institutions. So that's why the society decided to create these provisional institutions. And what we saw after the creation of this institution is the constant transfer of competences. Of course, once again, it was described as a democratization process. But if we compare it to the a special mechanism for Kosovo to be a part of the European Union in the future, I mean, stabilization tracking mechanism as a part of a stabilization and association process is a very special mechanism for Kosovo, but this is still very similar to, I mean, this is an element of treatment of Kosovo as a state, like other Balkan states. So this is just, the difference is only in the name of this mechanism. It was succeeded by the other mechanism in the year of 2010, but the idea is the same. It's a very special mechanism for Kosovo, but I think it's very, I mean, the treatment is similar to the state. And what we see in the March of 2004, we saw the riots in Kosovo, and at the first sight it looked like a spontaneous, but I read many professional reports on this issue, and political agenda was behind these riots. It was the signal from the Kosovo majority that they want to start the process they want to start the process connected with the final status of Kosovo. So it was a declaration, but that question should be answered in the future. So the response from international society was the standard before status policy. And it was a kind of, we can find some arguments for this policy, but what we saw in Kosovo throughout the in the next years, it was that it was complete failure. I mean, there were no standards, and of course, it was no status either. So international society decided that it should be standard with status policy, and it could be better, maybe, as an instrument for the democratization of Kosovo. And so they changed plans. I mean, this is from my academic perspective. I mean, I think that international society decided to change the rules. From the mid of 2005, it was the start of a process toward the final status of Kosovo. So despite the lack of standards, we as a society decided to start the process which led to the Declaration of Independence. So I would like to stress that new ministers were created. I mean, Minister of Internal Affairs, Minister of Justice. A very state-building process looks like. Don't you think? That's the question. And Ahtisaari plan from the year of 2007, despite all these guarantees for the minorities of Kosovo, it was, once again, it was a zero-sum game. A supervised sovereignty, it's the argument with the claim of the Kosovo's majority. I mean, it's the independence, simple. So so it was always, I mean, from my perspective, it was always Plan E, and it was never a Plan B, for example. So what I see in this international activity in Kosovo is the constant acceptance of claims of the one side, and the process is, it's zero-sum game once again, and one side win, and the second is, a little bit confused, I think. And what I see in the European Union policy towards Kosovo is the fact that before the Declaration of Independence, everything was agreed, and that's very, I mean, it's hard to accept this, but before the Declaration of Independence, everything was agreed on this issue about the EULEX mission. So during the negotiation, and you know the process, in the 2007, European Union started to prepare for the mission, which was planned to be a part of an Ahtisaari plan. Despite the rejection of plan, EU decided to appoint Peter Fate as a EU special representative, and he got the mandate of an international civilian representative simultaneously as a so this ICR representative is a function which is a part of this Ahtisaari plan, simple. So that's why it's a very unusual solution. So because EU is now a status neutral on the issue of Kosovo independence, but this is per facta concludentia, the strong support from the Ahtisaari plan. So that's why this European Union special representative, who has a mandate of ICR, it's in a very difficult situation, because as an EU representative, he supports a status neutral policy, but as an ICR, he simply observes the implementation of the Ahtisaari plan, which is very unexpected solution from my perspective. And what can I say that in the year of 2006, it was almost sure that Kosovo has only one solution. I mean, the status of Kosovo should be connected with the independence. A contact group declared, but there is no back to the 1999 status. It will be no division of Kosovo. It would not be a Kosovo's union with other country. So this is pretty much like, declaration, but the only possible solution for Kosovo is independence. So I think that the scenario described for Serbia is a scenario like, roll over, play dead, because I think that for many, it was written for Poland either in the, in the past. So don't get me, don't treat it as a root. I think that all these negotiations were, the result of these negotiations was about how to force Serbia to accept the solution, which was the independence of Kosovo. And the last element of this lack of consequence of the international society is the current structure of international institutions in Kosovo. I usually ask my students, could you please give me the name of all these acronyms? And they barely could, tell me what is behind this. And we have a UNMIK, we have the ULEX, we have the International Civilian Representative, we have the European Union Special Representative, we have KFOR and other institutions. But the fact is that if we analyze legal aspects of the UNMIK and ICR, we can find some legal gray zones, the shape of Canyon of Colorado, for example, because there are no direct regulations about who is the highest representative, but because according to Resolution 1244 is the UNMIK, according to Ahtisaari Plan is the ICR. So that's the question, actually. And of course, we have some international steering group, and so this is another self-proclaimed, this actually is self-proclaimed body who is willing to decide who will be the ICR. And this is complicated in the legal aspect, and of course in the field this is more complicated. Everybody knows that Kosovo is not a success story, I think. So the peace building is not the case of Kosovo. We are trying to do this, but we can find some ethnic hatred. We can find some, sectarian killing, and the protection of cultural heritage is not completely guaranteed at the moment. So I think that the final question is that could you buy a used car from this international society who planned all this legal, not only legal mess? And this is, I should be very cautious on this issue. And I think that what we see at the moment is the lack of very clear direction of activity of international society in Kosovo. And I think that this so-called status neutral policy of EU is not really status neutral, and I was trying to describe it to you. And I think that in the end of the day, Serbia should answer the question, what is more important? EU membership or the Kosovo? And I think, personally, that this is the reason why it's so hard to be a pro-European Democrat in Serbia. And this is a very hard question, I think. And I don't believe that. I think the last sentence is that I think that from the beginning it was almost clear that international society would accept the claim of a majority of Kosovo, and this is not fair, because if we believe in international law, some standards, we could expect that the application of the standard could be, the policy we support in every part of the world. And of course we can say, and sometimes politicians say that the Kosovo is a sui generis case, but this is the precedent. Okay, but we can find some precedents. I mean, the Northern Ireland, the Basque country, even Silesia in Poland is the similar problem. So this is not only the problem of Kosovo, actually. This is the problem of application of legal standards by the international society. It was, the main reason the main question I would like to present today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Konrad. That was a provoking presentation. Thank you to all the presenters in this panel. So we're now going to open the floor for questions. Please keep it as brief as possible. Yes.
Thank you for these interesting presentations. This is Alper Kalber from İzmir, Yaşar University, Turkey. My first question goes to Oksana. You mentioned that multiculturalism is not that good for Balkans. So could you be much more elaborate on this? Why this is not possible? And not tautological, but maybe a Balkan identity respecting the difference of societies could be a solution to construct a much more peaceful region. And in that respect, my second question goes to the last paper giver, Konrad. You were critical about the role of the international community, particularly EU, as far as I understand, regarding the Balkans. Do you think the EU's policies are helpful in the construction of more peaceful Balkans or not? I just want your opinions about this. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yes? Here, front.
Thank you. My comments and questions goes to Oksana's presentation. So, of course, there are several factors that makes state and nation. In our language, or in Balkan Slavic languages, we have clear distinctions between citizenship and nationality, between state and nation. So in many cases, national border do not fit with state borders. So when you speak about national consolidation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, you speak about state consolidation, isn't it? And also question this region, I mean West Balkans countries are poor, recently came from conflict. There are a lot of problems, but how could you explain the absence of completion of nation building in Belgium, for example? Thank you.
There, on the left.
Radu Kurčumaro, Heidelberg University, Germany. Thank you very much, all of you, for your fascinating presentations. Natalia, you're showing ambivalence of what is the concept of failed or failure, state failure was very, very thought-provoking. So thank you for this. Oksana, the same comments as previously already expressed. That is why I won't repeat it. But thank you very much for imagined communities, as we all know, due to constructivist Anderson. Zora, reconstruction of a deconstructed space. That's the first problem I do have. So a deconstructed space, is it being reconstructed the way it was previously, or in so? And then due to recent articles, not that recent articles of Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone, where I won't describe or say, you definitely know what it's about. So what do you think are the dangers of declining or facing difficulties in building up a strong social capital in Balkan countries, states? Then, very provoking presentation of Konrad. especially, yeah, right from the beginning, where was Europe in 1951 and where is Western Balkan now? So which Europe may ask you? So Western Europe, you mean? Then it's a little bit unfair to Poland and Romania and Bulgaria as well. So slow process, I think it's a little bit also unfair due to the fact that state building process and nation building process took place for hundreds of years in France, Germany, Italy. So now we all suffer from this uneasiness, anxiousness, and impatience regarding state building and consolidation concerning Western Balkan states, new states. So better now, better yesterday. It should be legitimate and trust should be there. Regarding EU membership and your last quite provocative statement, Serbia should decide whether to be an EU member or have Kosovo. Have I understood you correctly? Yes, so is it Serbia, up to Serbia to decide? And I think to be as provocative as you, Serbia would decide right away if it would be Serbia's decision. So would you elaborate on this? Thank you very much.
Okay. Philip?
Thank you very much. My name is Filip Eidus, Belgrade University. Thank you all for very interesting presentations. I will have a short question to Zora Popova. I really liked your argument in your paper, and I subscribe to most of your conclusions about the need of a different type of social contract in the Balkans, which is some sort of post-national or supranational social contract. However, I'm a little bit more skeptical than you that there are actors either in the region or at the European level who can drive and promote such a social contract. States in the region derive their legitimacy from this ethno-nationalist background, while the EU does not have, or at least it seems to me, does not have enough social capital itself to promote such a social contract. So who can drive the process and who can actually push this new sort of social contract in the Western Balkans, in your opinion? Thank you.
Okay. I think we're going to start with the answers now. I think we'll start with Zora on the first question and then with Konrad.
Okay. So, to start with, first about the reconstruction of the deconstructed space. Probably I should have said in the beginning that I'm using the postmodern concept of deconstruction, because the reconstruction after deconstruction is in fact constructing of something new. It's not rebuilding or restoring the previously existed. So that is why I'm kind of playing with words, you know, just saying that there is a reconstruction that's going on, but in fact it's a completely new space in a set of new principles. So this was just to clarify. And just to answer your second question about Putnam, in fact, I've been using his ideas about the bridging and bonding social capital. In fact, what is needed here in the Balkans, I believe, is exactly the type of a bridging social capital that is between groups and that kind of creates links groups together. And also there is another theory that develops this concept of the linking social capital, and because the bonding one is exclusive, it forms the rules of the game that excludes everybody who is not one of us, while the bridging tolerates the differences. And that is why I think Putnam is just does not provide kind of all these needed instruments to elaborate on, and that's why I've been using him only with these concepts. So who could help? In fact, in my opinion, the future, the kind of, how to say, the chances for development are based on the common interests of the common future. So that is why I started with the social contract. Putting up different rules of the social contract, different type of, how to say, goals in front of all of us, that would, I would expect that over the years. It won't happen naturally within a year or two. That would bring about this positive change, and that will drive people towards kind of will present them with better goals in a way to follow. In this way, because I think that the question about the multiculturalism was addressed to me. So that is why I do not believe that multiculturalism is the best basis, I mean the social contract to be formed on. Because if we put the ethnicity as a driving principle that establishes the rules of the game, we are lost. I mean, how can you say who is better than the other and whether the one ethnicity should be promoted than the other, or the religion and so on? That is why I believe that if we accept that this civil identity is bring kind of in front or on the top of all the rest. And that is why the concept of nested identities, it means that you've got, you know, for example, your religion, then your culture, then your ethnic affiliation, and then you have the social affiliation, I mean the citizenship affiliation. And if this is affiliation with a nation state, is in the Balkans, it's a kind of a problematic. But if we have the EU citizenship in a way to be our kind of ultimate identity, then there is this chance to this process to emerge, and it will start from the grassroots level going above. That is why I spoke about the engineered social capital, because what we observe here is that foreign international communities coming and introducing models that are not are just floating. They don't have grounds, they don't have roots in the Balkans. And that is why it should be kind of, this should be not only top-down, but also bottom-up process running simultaneously. So I think I answered the questions. So thank you for the attention.
Thank you. So the first question was from the gentleman from Turkey, and the question is EU policy constructive? As I understand your question, of course, yes, it is, and it's helpful, and we can, especially in terms of economy. So we can find some numbers that investments in Kosovo are the highest one per capita if you compare it to the other sub-countries. That's true, and I will not say anything against this. It's planned to rebuild houses, to build some institutions, and I can say that this is very important. But once again, I don't believe that EU has clear policy over the Kosovo, actually, and it's not because of 5 countries, EU countries, did not recognize Kosovo as a sovereign state, but because EU made some failures in the Balkans in the past. I mean, you probably know the term Solania. It's Never Land. I mean, the country which, I mean, according to EU jargon, the Solania means the solution which is very hard to preserve, very hard to keep alive. Actually, it was first it was called to the Ohrid Agreement in Macedonia, and it was, of course, it was a good solution for Macedonia, I guess. But the fact is that, for example, the EU stands towards the independence of Montenegro. Until the 2006, EU was trying to force Montenegro to stay as a part of state federation with Serbia. I don't know which solution is better, but it's a kind of, it's a kind of policy who is against the will of, for example, Montenegrins. So that's why, and sometimes I think that EU policy is a bureaucracy over democracy. And now you probably know the term autonomous trade measures. So Kosovo was granted with ATM in the year of 2002, but in the end of 2010, it became, I mean, it lasted. And so at the 1st January of this year, the Kosovo economic cooperation with EU shifted toward less, how to say, less beneficial status. And the only reason why this ATM were not prolonged until 2015, it was the question of it was the question of a name of Kosovo, because some countries were trying to remove this slogan, Kosovo according to United Nations Security Council resolution. So, you know, some bureaucracy is EU policy either. That's what I was trying to say. And if we analyze the effectiveness of international society and EU in particular, so we should still keep in mind that about 200,000 Kosovo Serbs are still here. Am I correct? I mean, because I found such a number, but if we compare this, so we can say that despite all this peace-building activity in the Balkans, these hundreds of Serbs are still here because of many reasons, because of economic reasons. But I think that we should, you know, keep in mind the fact that Kosovo is still a dangerous place for Serbs, not us 10 years ago, but I think it's still the question how international society was able to bring Albanians in a week in the 1999, and this is still the problem of Kosovo refugees. I mean the Serbs, actually. So, and if we compare, if we ask Serbs what do they feel about ULEX mission, so some percentages show us that Serbs are skeptical about the EU mission because officially it's status neutral, but they perceived this mission as a part of state building process in Kosovo. So that's why, I mean, I have some mixed feelings about the effectiveness. I don't want to be a radical in any way. I mean, so don't get me wrong, but I ask some questions, and I not always find some, you know, reliable answers. And the question from the gentleman from Germany, and of course, when I say about the year of 1951, I thought about the relations between Germany and France. It was the most important that time, and we know that the nature of relations between those countries are very important for Europe, for the stability of the whole continent. So I thought about this. Monet Declaration was the signal that this is the beginning of a new chapter, simply. And is it the question about decision? Who will decide about the Kosovo status? And unfortunately, I say that once again, that for Serbia, scenario is, I mean, play that. So just signed. I mean, during the negotiation, I was trying to say this. During the negotiations, the one solution which was really on the table was the sovereignty. Of course, supervised, you know, with international presence, military, civilian, etc. But still the sovereignty. It wasn't a scenario that it could be something different. I mean, and I think the international society, it was the lack of a, you know, strong declaration, but it wasn't. But you can expect more than autonomy, for example, but forget about the independence. Like, for example, in Basque country, something like this. Because I don't want to sound like a nationalist or something like this, but I think that the possible scenario was a kind of confederation until 2006, between a kind of federation between Montenegro, Serbia, and Kosovo. So it could be a solution at that time. Now it's, we can say it is decided by the international society. Sorry, but I mean, now we have some carrots from the EU, for example, that this EU, I mean, it's decided, but it doesn't mean that I personally accepted this decision or support this. So I think that we have some carrots for Serbia. I mean, SAA agreement with EU, some financial support in the CEP process. We know this. And the fact is that the EU probably, of course, now it's not officially linked. I mean, decision over Kosovo is not a part of European agenda it's not a part of EU policy towards Serbia. Like Bernard Kouchner said last time when he was here in Belgrade, he said that it won't be compulsory for Serbia to recognize the independence of Kosovo as a sine qua non of the European future of Serbia. So this is the signal, I mean the positive signal that EU now is trying to be more objective in some way. But I think that once again that in the end of the day the question will occur and it will be very difficult for Serbia to choose which direction the country should choose. From my Polish perspective, it sounds maybe a little bit strange, but to think by heart or by mind, something like this. This is a very emotional question actually, because we all have some, lost territories. I mean, Poles, Germans, for example. I mean, the same actually. So this is very. I mean, a couple of years ago, I saw the European Parliament Committee on International Affairs session. So I was a part-time assistant of the MP, and I saw the debates, and it was completely disappointing from my perspective, because EU has no clear stance towards Serbia. I mean, of course, we support some European progress and democratization, etc. But what should be about this Kosovo problem? And I think what is now in EU, I mean, EU is divided over the Kosovo, not because only of the Balkans, but I think that EU is divided because of some standards, simple. And the last question is that EU policy is not consistent, is the fact that it was easy to force Cyprus to unite. Of course, it was a failure. I mean, the Kofi Annan plans was rejected, actually, but EU was trying to enforce the unification of the Cyprus. It doesn't, I mean, it's wrong or right, it doesn't matter at the moment, but why this policy is not the same towards the Kosovo, I mean the unification. So I was trying to ask about the consistency of this policy. That's why I'm trying, and I have my personal feelings about some aspects of things I have said, but I'm just trying to ask some important questions and show some inconsistency at the international society policy towards Balkans. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments and the question about the Belgium. We also can remember not only Belgium but Switzerland in accordance to the question of national problems in Bosnia and the other Western Balkan countries. But we know from the history that Belgium, as Switzerland also, have historical experience and old political and democratic traditions, but there are no traditions in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and we can also mark Bosnia maybe as an artificial country, because the post-date in Bosnia is inherent and instability political space. And the question is to consolidate the state. We haven't an opportunity to consolidate the nation, because the national identity is not only the mutual political, social and economical space, but also the common national feelings, myths and history memory. So also there is a problem of the loyalty, as I said, because not all citizens in Bosnia want to live in the common state. So the future of this country is also how to say, is unexpected maybe. So we will see what will be in the future. Thanks for your question.
Are there any questions that have been answered? No? Okay. And we're going to close this panel. And now we can go enjoy the lunch. And we're going to reconvene here at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much.